All right.
Hi, I'm Tom Vallone with Integrity Research Institute, and today I want to give you a brief 5 or 10 minute description of the problem today existing worldwide with the consequences of atmospheric carbon dioxide and its effect on the planet. Right here we have a picture taken from Hawaii, the Mauna Leo Observatory, which is current for the actually the end of March 2011 level of CO2. Currently we're looking at 392 parts per million, which has been a constantly increasing amount that you can see updated on our website homepage, integrityresearchinstitute.org. Sea level change is what we're talking about, and let's take a look at basically what Al Gore has given us and many other scientists, including Jim Hansen and other climatologists. The important thing we've learned from 10 years ago is from an environmental science textbook, and that is the ice caps and the north and south poles tend to increase in temperature faster than the equator and even the temperate zones that we live in, northern and southern hemispheres. It's typical to have a hole in the ice at 90 degrees north latitude, in other words the North Pole, and the ice sheets itself has been about 8 feet thick, melting at a rate of about 10 feet or 3 meters every decade. So we expect in the next decade, our institute is projecting that we're foreseeing the total removal and melting of the polar ice cap during the summer months. And eventually another 20 years from now, we probably will have no ice cap whatsoever at the northern pole. And this is very serious in terms of albedo. Albedo is the reflection amount of sunlight going from white surface to a dark absorbing ocean surface, meaning we're going to absorb more heat as well. Now the important focus we're making here is a graph that was published through Dr. Jim Hansen, NASA's climatologist, in MIT's Technology Review magazine in 2006. We presented this at our conference on future energy in 2006 as soon as it came out, because this graph shows us the 400,000 year history of the tracking of 3 major variables that have been measured from the Greenland ice cap. And specifically that is the atmospheric CO2, the average earth temperature, and sea level. These are color coded in the black, red, and blue lines that you see, sea level being blue and the average earth temperature being red. And as you can see, every 100,000 years or so you get a spike, and what used to be the effect of ice age happening for most of the 90,000 years, and then about 10,000 years of interglacial period. We've experienced that continually on a cyclic basis every 100,000 years. The surprising thing you learn from this graph is how tightly the variables of sea level, CO2, and temperature track each other. Now in Al Gore's movie, Inconvenient Truth, we see the end of the graph, which you barely see here at 377 parts per million of CO2. He gets up on a utility lifter just to point to that unusual variable that's way beyond what anything the Earth has experienced for 500,000 years. That should very much call to our attention. We're going to uncharted territory. Now, how uncharted is this territory? Well, what I did is I thought, this is hard to figure out for the layman, and I want to make it digestible. So what I did is to take this graph, grab the beginning part of it, the beginning part that's another 100,000 years from 400 to say 250, and combine it with the most recent material. And so that's exactly what you find on our homepage. And I also converted it to a tiny URL, which is tinyurl.com/64C to SMO. And the important part of this is that the data is now a lot more digestible. You can see the variables pointing to the 3 different lines that we're talking about, and the tracking happens to go lockstep up to a point where the sea level at 290 We call it 0 meters sea level, which is a starting point, and the 15 degrees world temperature on the average being this common axis, horizontal axis, for all three variables. Now the interesting thing about this MIT graph, and this is very, very important, and that's why I spent hours making this composite graph available, is that we actually can now do a conversion between the three variables because they're all calibrated to the same graph. And the interesting thing is, if we look at a key here, which is what I was able to discern from the graph itself, is that the key is 10 parts per million equal a half a degree C equals 10 meters. That is the answer to how will the change in carbon dioxide level affect sea level and temperature. And what are the conclusions? Well, let me move this a little bit so we can actually see the projector to the left a little bit. And we'll see, there we go, thank you. The conversion on the right side here is temperature gap is 4 degrees C or 7 degrees F. That comes right from the graph in 2006 that Jim Hansen has given us. Now this is, first of all, in terms of temperature, a very surprising amount of heat. We have heard from the climatologists for years, even after 2006, that maybe 1 degree, 2 degree change could be the average that they're predicting. Well, this graph tells us quite a different story. 4 degrees C, 7 degrees F is what we're indebted to the old global CO2 level in 2006. So let's just stay with the 377, forget the 391 I just showed you in the first slide, because 377 is scary enough. And 7 degrees Fahrenheit is a huge change in temperature on the average. Let's not even describe how soon we're going to see this temperature change. If we see 1 or 2 degrees Fahrenheit in the next decade, that'll be a lot. 7 degrees by the end of the century, very possible. However, what I think is even more unusual, and perhaps longer in terms of the time it'll take to manifest, is the sea level change. How much sea level change are we indebted to for this amount of change of CO2? Well, the sea level gap turns out to be 80 meters. 80 meters is the projected sea level rise just from 377 parts per million that we've already incurred worldwide. Now, how could 80 meters possibly be even manifested on the Earth? I spent at least a year after digesting and deciphering this graph to figure out where this water would come from. Turns out that Greenland, if the entire Greenland ice cap melts, we're going to see about a 10-meter rise in sea level. That's about 30 feet. That's a lot. However, Antarctica is another land-based ice cap. And when that melts, that's going to be projected, it is projected already by the experts, to be at least 60 meters of sea level rise. So 60 plus 10, we've accounted for 70 meters of this projected 80 meters. And of course, mountaintop glaciers, Himalayan glaciers, all of those are melting as well, as you see in Inconvenient Truth. And so overall, this is not an unusual amount. We can see, for example, Florida disappearing, from Louisiana disappearing, perhaps in the next few centuries. So the important part here is the temperature is something very serious, and it would be wonderful to see this go back down to the Earth average, we call it, that we've seen for the past 400,000 years. Because then there's no need for sea level or for the temperature to try to lockstep follow the CO2 leadership. If we're able to reduce and absorb CO2, which there are sequestering technologies available to do that, and of course non-fossil fuel based energy, those are the most important things to implement immediately. And that's what Dr. Jim Hansen tells his audiences all the time. He says there's no possible benefit from carbon trading. He says someone's still going to burn the carbon. Instead, we have to stop burning carbon completely and emitting carbon dioxide. And one thing I wanted to finish up with here is the important part of the temperature rise. Temperature gap of 4 degrees C and 7 degrees F I thought was also exceedingly high, and I questioned whether that was valid. Well, it turns out within 3 years, in 2009, 2 groups actually produced the same results. And we'll just get rid of this little pop-up here so we can show you the details. 2 different climate groups, same prediction. The first one was from England, from Europe, the European climate group. 4 degrees C was projected in 2009. And this was a very well-known climatologist committee that is projecting by 2055 we will see the complete 4 degrees C. That's halfway to the end of the century. The other interesting thing is this was in October. Just a few days before, in September, Washington Post published the same exact prediction from an American UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and specifically forecasts a 6 degrees increase. So this is phenomenal that both the Celsius and the Fahrenheit predictions are verified by experts within 3 years of the ice cap information being made public. And what's interesting too is the Washington Post graph points out 6 degrees is only if we make some changes to the country's policies. If there are no changes, this group is predicting an 8 degree Fahrenheit increase by 2055. So you have the facts, and I hope mankind will make an informed decision knowing that we're facing perhaps between 6 and 8 degrees Fahrenheit increase. And of course, a lot of changes and a lot of deserts are going to appear out of nowhere because of the fact of thermal forcing, of much more heat in the atmosphere, and of course a lot less ability to control where that water is going to be manifested as tornadoes and hurricanes increase with force. So we're integrityresearchinstitute.org. We're happy to provide future energy solutions to this enormous problem that mankind is facing, and we are optimistic that we will solve this problem and offer the best answers to providing a carbon-free future as soon as possible. Thank you.